Smoking is bad for you, but so is intersex activism. Sometimes it gets too much, but you gotta continue. So I'd like to talk about what Gina Wilson, president of Organisation Intersex International Australia, talks about third gender option on birth certificates. Okay, I've just read it now, so I'll read it out to you. So Gina Wilson writes about why they are against having an intersex option on birth certificates, as proposed by a Canberra Law Council this week in Australia. As an organisation with extensive experience with our membership in countries where third sex options are available, we note that such options only serve to marginalise and further discriminate against those categorised as neither male nor female. Given the current two-sex system is used to discriminate against around 50% of the world's population, we do not see how further categories will relieve discrimination against anyone. The need for further sex categories has the feel of a middle-class exercise in do-good engagement without any experience or understanding of the issues. OII advocates the right of all people to opt out of the sex categorization racket and all of the bigotry and prejudice that accompanies it. By not specifying sex on documentation, we retain our right to silence on the issue and the opportunity to disembark from this particular adventure. Excuse the smoke. If a category such as intersex was allowed, on what basis would one qualify? Would one need medical proof, thus pathologizing the category and further legitimizing the current pathologies that support non-consensual surgeries on infants and treatments for adults that are not supported by evidence or long-term studies? Who would be the gatekeeper of intersex? Another International Olympic Committee, IOC, like exercise in deciding who is male and who is female, potentially privileging some over others, especially if some benefits were attached to winning an intersex certificate. Scrolling down, would it boil down to the odious exercise of trans spotting, outing those who could not produce evidence and whose bodies have already had all traces of their intersex erased by infant surgeries and effectively vilifying them in the process? What of XX congenital adrenal hyperplasia (CAH) folk who would have to battle against the current trend by parents, friends and doctors who steadfastly declare CAH is not in any circumstances intersex? So who decides just what diagnosis is in and which is out? Will people who have lived with the stigma of a non-conforming sex anatomy suffer the indignity of inspection and proof? How will the issue of secrecy, lack of access to documentation and records, long a plague on intersex individuals and widely reported on by academics and intersex organisations, see Katrina Karkazi's Fixing Sex for examples, be addressed? The Western world has been endeavouring to fix the discrimination and stigma that accompanies the certification of a human being as female for the better part of 200 years and still struggles to remedy the problems. Why on earth would another category fare any better? Just need to smoke. Then for those who are not intersex, not male, not female, not trans, not twin spirit, not androgynous, not non-gendered, not bigendered, you get the drift? The possibilities are endless. The descriptors are only limited by human imaginations. It is time to stop the rot of the inventions of endless categories to provide human beings with access to full human rights and identity. Simply barring discrimination on the basis of sex characteristics will suffice. For those who want descriptors, have a fill-in box instead of tick boxes where anything one desires to describe their gender may be written. A person's freely given indication would be sufficient to qualify them for the descriptor. Indeed, in an equal society, there is no reason for sex designators to be included in the vast preponderance of documentation. The real necessity right now is only for the census-like information to be gathered, so marginalized peoples can be identified and resources can be allocated. If we were not the subject of discrimination and unfair treatment, only our lovers, and then not always, and our medical practitioner would have a legitimate reason to inquire about our sex parts. The government and society needs to get their noses out of our underpants. Okay, I totally agree with that. Normally I don't agree with Gina Wilson on a lot of stuff, but we won't get into that. The point is, when I fill out an application form, if it includes an application form with I have to put down my sex, I'm only going to see male and female, and I always, construct another box in between male and female if there's space, or else underneath it or wherever I can on the form, and I put a box and I tick it and I put intersex. Then I write down intersex, and as I just wrote somewhere today, I basically get a lot of raised eyebrows when they look at the form, the filled out form. I very rarely get questions on to explain what I've done, which is bad because I'd like to answer, um, and I'd like them to be aware more. So most of the time they kind of ignore that. They just don't want to get into it. But I can only imagine, and only presume that these people that do look at my forms immediately probably think to themselves, well, he must be transsexual, or pre-op transsexual, wants to be another sex, something like that, And I think there's a huge problem in the world that trans people get a lot of media attention and intersex people don't. It does kind of upset the so-called balance of the world, with this lovely pink and blue illusion that people have got. But the reality is, for me and for a lot of other people, is that we're actually in a purple world. It's a mix of pink and blue, and I would see every single body with their own personal individual mind. I would see every body um, being a different shade of purple rather than being a distinct blue or a distinct pink. And I personally also am fed up with the boxes on these application forms suggesting that we have to be completely blue or completely pink, when in fact there's so many examples of living human beings who are speaking out, and those ones who are silent, by the way, who are not pink or blue. So I'd like to thank Amazing Yes, Peace and Party is thanking Gina Wilson for that particular piece, and I do hope for peace in the world. Ciao, people. Thanks for listening.